Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts in the franchising industry to provide actionable insights and data processes, things that can actually help you improve your business and your franchise, which is why I've brought with me the lovely Dawn Abbamondi today from SMB Franchise Advisors. A lot of you guys probably see her on stage holding mics and giving insights at conferences. Dawn, thanks for being on the show today with me.
I am very happy to be here, Dave. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, too bad we didn't get to share the pre-recording with everyone. That was pretty funny. We will share the details on that. I want to introduce you guys to Dawn. If you don't know her, let me tell you a little bit about her. Let me tell you about SMB Franchise Advisors. As I do the intro, you'll realize, oh, that's why she's on the show, because Dawn's awesome. So let's start with, CFE. She's invested in the industry. She's been in the industry for 25 years. Is that right? Yeah, which
Yeah.
she started when she was 6, guys. And
Clearly.
now she's the CMO of SMB Franchise Advisors. And she's been there since 2011. That's a while, Dawn. So and if you don't know what they do, because in my mind, I actually thought I got educated here a little bit. I'd always thought, well, they're specializing. SMB Franchise Advisors specializes in launching brands, which they do, but they actually do a lot of at post-launch consulting for brands that are trying to really emerge and grow, and even those are even later stage, help them really succeed. So they have a full range of services, consulting across the board, experts with what's the average tenure of your staff, Dawn, that are coaching?
More than 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been around franchising for a long time.
Yeah, well, rather than me continue to butcher this, actually, I got to tell a few more things about you, if that's okay, because I want people to know how awesome you are. But then I want you to tell us more about you and SMB Franchise Advisors. But Dawn, guys, she doesn't just like live in the industry. She contributes a lot of content. She writes for the Franchise Dictionary magazine, contributes to Entrepreneur magazine. She co-chairs the Philadelphia Women Franchise group, or the networking group, IFA Women's Franchise Committee. So Dawn's hyper invested and involved, and really connected, really experienced. So I won't hype you more, Dawn. I don't want to make you blush, but would you tell us a bit more about kind of what you do, what SMB Franchise Advisors does, and then we'll jump into the topic.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. SMB, as you kind of intoned, I did not start with them in 2011 as a new company. They were started in 2009. No, 2009. We're jumping forward into the future. So 15 years. And I actually was part of their consulting client base originally. I was working for a franchisor in the Philadelphia market. We had 35 franchisees, and our CEO took an emergency leave of absence, and Steve came in to be an interim CEO, bringing his team with him. So I got to work with them for about a year and a half before his consultancy, ended. And my husband and I actually were franchisees with that brand as well. And so we kind of shifted gears a little bit. I left the company and went out to really, manage that business a little bit more. We bought it in 2008. It was perfect timing, and probably paid a little more than we should have, and really focused on exiting that business. So we owned it for 5 years as franchisees. But as you said, SMB helps companies who want to grow through franchising. So either that is preparing to enter the franchise industry, and we look at their business and we say, is this model franchisable? And in some cases, we tell them, here are some things you need to do. Go and work it and get margin, points to where they need to be in order to allow franchisees to be profitable. Or, hey, you really don't have as much money to invest in franchising as you might need. You probably need to save a little bit and bring in more revenue from your core business. But the bulk of our clients come to us ready to franchise. They are, looking to grow, and they either think they're going to open another location, or they're ready to jump right into franchising. Mm-hmm. And then another, large group of companies now come to us that are already franchise brands and just need a little spark or magic, I guess, to help them get to the next level, whether it's sales or improvement in their operations, or they don't have an item 19 in their FDD, and our legal and finance team will look at their numbers and say, you've got a great story to tell. Why is this not part of your FDD? So we really approach each client where they are and look to help them get to the next level and achieve their goals through franchising.
Awesome. Well, that's great because there are a plethora of folks that are ready to help people get into franchising, but it just seems like not as many that are willing to coach and mentor and help the brands that have already taken the plunge to get their head above water. So that's cool. I'm glad that you guys are doing that. And guys, I've known Don for a couple of years now and really been
Mhm.
impressed, Don, with you, and your reputation is sterling. So I'll just say that because everyone I talk to about you is like, oh my gosh, Don's the best. So we'll
Well,
get to
thank
the fun
you.
part at the end where we'll ask you to share some contact details or something so people can reach
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the topic, guys. So the reason I wanted Don to join is we were having, I can't remember where this conversation started. I feel like it was at a conference or a networking thing. But what do you wish that every franchise founder knew as they were taking this plunge into franchising or after they've taken the plunge into franchising? And you had a great lesson like we got to talk about that. So
Yeah.
let's just, if you don't mind, Don, tell us a little bit about what I mean. Maybe give us a rundown of some of these lessons, and then we'll just dive into them one by one. Because I want you guys to
Yeah.
keep some of the wisdom just in the topics that Don shared.
So yeah, I think that there are a lot of times people come to us and they don't know exactly how to approach franchising. So the one that stands out is that there are brands that are similar to others. And so I would recommend that you look at your business and ask yourself if there's something different that you offer to the industry. You don't have to be completely innovative and, out there in this completely different business. You can be very successful in another successful industry. It's actually a little bit better if you are, because then people look at you and they know that there are some options and they're going to choose your brand. So you don't have to be 100% unique, but you should start to think about some of the background to help protect yourself. So I think we should talk a little bit about that. Um, you don't have to have $1 million, but you should have more than 100,000, right? You should be ready to reinvest into your business in order to expand through franchising and continue to reinvest in that because it is much more about your franchisees' success than yours. And one of the things that I love is when people are like, wow, that brand just came out of nowhere. So in my experience, franchising isn't viral. It's not an overnight success. It's a long-term process that becomes successful. And a lot of times people just see it when a brand gets to, a household name, but they've been working behind the scenes in markets where they started regionally and then they start to expand and all of a sudden they hit the franchise 500 or, a fastest growing brand, or they're recognized by the IFA. And they've been at it for years, really working the franchise model. So
Yeah,
those are my top four.
I call it the pickleball principle.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because I played pickleball in high school. I won't tell you how long ago that was, but we played wooden paddles, wiffle balls, this
Mhm.
exact same game. But it wasn't until what, like 5 years ago, when all of a sudden pickleball is like, but
Yep.
it's the bamboo, like it's been growing, building, and all of
Yes.
a sudden it got the right marketing head behind it, and then everyone started throwing converting all the old tennis courts into pickleball courts, and all the 70-year-olds
Mhm.
are ticked because they're like, we can't play tennis anymore. But anyway, yeah, I love it. Well, let's jump into topic one because I feel like, and I'll lean into this a little bit with some personal experience. I work, clientele that we work with a whole bunch of like painting brands and home service
Mhm.
brands. I want to talk about painting. Putting a coating on a wall um, is putting a coating on a wall, right? And yet there are brands that have created and carved out little niches of
Mhm.
uniqueness that I think are pretty impressive. And I won't share details, client details, but there are also I've consulted with and met with several brands that are just another painting company that has zero unique value to add, and they
Mhm.
struggle. And so I just
Right.
personally have seen this so much in that little microcosm of like home services. Tell us a little bit more
Right.
about like what do how do people create uniqueness and innovativeness without being dumb about it? Because you can also pretend that you have something unique that's not unique, and you can also overinvest in something that's unique. Like, I know people have tried to build their own, like, technology suite to paint houses, and they think that's unique. I'm like, "No, the only unique thing is that your P&L is screwed because you're trying to carry the
Oh,
cost of
yeah.
this development." So, how do you coach people to find that balance, Don?
Yeah, I think when we start looking at a new brand that comes to us, we dive really deep into their brand and ask them what is different and unique about them. How are they going to position themselves in the market? And sometimes they don't really know. I really don't like it when they tell us, "Oh, I want to be like Chipotle," or "I want to be like Starbucks." And I haven't had a client say that in probably 5 years. But for a long time, that is what they would say to us. And I'm like, first of all, those aren't franchise brands. And second of all, tell me what's different about you. And so, whether it's their branding, it's their customer facing strategy, or more so, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, especially since COVID, it's about leaning into their culture. How do they want to live their life? Who do they want to surround themselves with? And how do they support their team to
Mm,
grow? And so each founder has a different reason for doing what they're doing. It could be, family lifestyle so that they can literally, just work 5 days a week hard and have weekends off. Or it is that they really want to, be workaholics until they're done and retire. Or, everybody is different. And, they all come to us with something, and we just have to dig a little deeper in order to find out what it is that makes them special,
mhm,
even if they are selling hamburgers or
yeah,
any other product. So we really try to pull out of them those characteristics, because they should be surrounding themselves with people that they like, franchisees who see the same future that they do, even if people come from all different backgrounds or education,
mhm,
or different areas of the country. They're going to be able to really lean into and leverage, I think, the personalities of those franchisees in their own community, so that that franchisee can become their own brand ambassador and support their community of customers, whether it's restaurant, retail, or service. They have to become the voice and the face of the brand in that community.
yeah, I love it. Let's talk about different types of uniqueness, if you don't mind, Don, because there are so many
Sure.
dimensions here. One of the things that you'd mentioned early on, like before, I think before we started recording, was about like having something that's trademarkable, service markable, design mark, patent. I mean, having something that's actually defensively unique about you. Not
Mhm.
everybody will have that. Not everyone will have that. But let's at least talk about trademarks, because frankly, if you're gonna do have a franchise, you should probably have something trademarked that's unique. But
Yeah.
share some insights on that.
For sure. So not everybody comes to us with a trademark.
Mhm.
And so we definitely have them start early on to work with their intellectual property attorney or their franchise attorney to go ahead and file that historical record that they have with their brand, name, logo, marks. So even if somebody is thinking long term, and advanced planning, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes the industry trends are just growing so fast. To your point, pickleball, right? 5 years ago, probably people weren't really thinking about franchising until, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And so I think some of those who went out and they said, okay, I plan to do this, let me trademark it now, is a good idea. But it takes 6 to 12 months to go through that process. So you can start working on franchising while you file. And if you have history with your brand, a unique name is certainly something that we look for, or that the attorney is going to look for, because that's what the US Patent and Trademark Office is going to look for. And it is getting more competitive. So the earlier you do it, the better. If you have used a designer and they used, some stock imagery for your logo, probably going to have some trouble with it. If you can have somebody design a totally different, unique icon to go with your logo, it would be easier to do it before you have franchisees. Because once you have franchisees, they don't want to redo their brand. And if you absolutely have to, we have coached our franchisors through the process. We had a really great brand in 2015. They had a name that there was absolutely no way they were going to get.
Mhm.
The NFL had their name. It was Super Bowls, Long Island. And there was absolutely no way the NFL was going to let them keep Super Bowls. And so they were very upfront and they were really transparent with their franchisees. And they said, look, we're going through a name change. You're going to have to get a new sign. You're going to have to redo everything. And so they allowed a budget as part of that campaign to rebrand once the trademark got approved. And so now they have Sobol and they have 75 plus units across the country. But they had to go through a transition period, and they worked with their franchisees from the very beginning, being really upfront and honest about it. So that's just that's like one side of the story of how it can work.
Mhm.
But planning ahead helps too.
Oh, man. Yeah, especially with trademarks. I've actually filed and gotten trademarks myself before. We used to run an e-commerce business years ago, and it gave me a leg to stand on, competitive
Mhm.
edge.
Yeah,
Anyway, it was powerful, but in franchising, it's not just you. You got everyone that's signing up underneath you. You've got to protect their ability to be unique in the marketplace and protect their brand,
right.
your brand.
Yeah, and the final thought on that is that I think sometimes people think that they have it because they have filed in their state, and that is absolutely true in their state.
Mhm,
But where the problem will come in is when they want to move and franchise into other parts of the country, that they need the federal mark.
mhm. Yeah,
So,
agreed, agreed, and there's more. Even when you talk about naming conventions, like, uh, using a local name makes a lot of sense when you're a local business, right? Like if I was
mhm,
like Wasatch, well, Wasatch is unique enough, but if I were like, Utah, something rather,
right.
doesn't matter how good your brand is, like
No,
that's stand up
yeah.
in like LA, people are not going to want to go to a Utah brewery or whatever the case that thing might be, right? So you have to bear in mind that like if you're going to think big, go into franchising, then think big. Like don't think small
Mhm,
local and then pretend like you're big. Like that doesn't convert super well. I've seen a few people struggle with that.
yeah.
Let's shift. So other forms of uniqueness. What about service models? Like how are some other ways you see people stand out as they're trying to create some uniqueness and innovativeness around their brand?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the way they deliver their products, and it could be their customer service interface. How do their team interact with the customer? Or it's, we've had brands who have said, okay, this is a model that has always traditionally been the customer comes to the location. And I think it's a lot more popular after COVID, where brands come to, it's the Amazon, we deliver it to you at your doorstep.
Mhm,
But it's increasing that value of time for the customer and delivering the service or the product where they are. So there are a number of brands who I've seen do that successfully. And I'd like to see that happening where it could be any commodity. It could be oil changes or, getting your windshield replaced. Bringing the prep home delivery food to your house so that somebody doesn't have to go shopping.
mhm,
Um, Not all of those are franchise models, but if a brand is looking at how can I deliver a similar product that has a little bit of unique quality to it through either the messaging or the way they bring the product or service to the customer, that is a good standout.
yeah, I agree. And it's funny because I talked to some people as I've gotten to know them at events and things. They're like, well, so, like a painter, what makes you unique? Oh, we just deliver a really high quality service. No, I said what makes you unique, like, because everybody
Yep.
says that, right? It's
Mhm.
we deliver a great customer experience. Good. What does that
Mhm.
mean? Now, if your guys show up wearing like, Beastie Boys zip up outfits and like and there's something unique and they sing when they paint, okay, now you have something unique about you, but like you just treating a customer with respect and dignity and collecting their money in a nice way doesn't make
Mhm.
it unique. So you got to think
Yeah.
outside the box. In fact, I'll
Yeah,
riff for a second if you don't mind about that. I had a brand that I was talking to and about their technology strategy, and he's like, "Well, you see, we don't really need to invest in technology. We don't need to do this, and because that's not how we run our business. So that's not what people need." Now, this guy was building a uniqueness uh, that was embarrassing actually because in his sector, everybody's using technology. In fact, I worked with 7
absolutely.
or 8 of them. And so he was actually differentiating negatively because he didn't pay attention to what everybody else was doing. So I guess if we talk about uniqueness, also recognize where you need to be the same or at least on
Mhm.
par with other people. Because you could be like crazy unique in like your branding and have like, purple turtles painted all over your painting trucks. And if you can't answer a phone or respond to a lead in a timely manner, like, who cares, right? So you gotta pay
Right.
attention to, like, what are table stakes? And make sure you're at the table. And then also
Mhm.
then innovate above the table, I guess is just a thought I have about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the service on that, I live in a 140-year-old house. I could have a handyman on staff, every month with a project to do. So I think some of the features that I love about being, in an old home that needs home services is that they answer your call for a quotation quickly. They tell you who they are. They send you a picture of who is going to show up at your door, right? I mean, if you're anybody at home, you don't want to pick up your phone or answer your doorbell if you don't know somebody's coming, right? People don't just randomly show up at your house anymore. um, some of those levels of just taking it up to the next level of that communication point, um, and and doing it consistently. It's not just to get the client, but it's all the way through the process
Mhm.
from start to finish.
Yeah. That's a unique customer experience, tech enabled, highly
Mhm.
they're using channels that you actually wanna communicate through.
Right. Hmm.
That's smart. Well, so, okay, we've talked about being unique. Now let's shift gears and talk about kind of this concept. There are very rare instances where somebody's an overnight success. You'd mentioned that. Yeah, that was an overnight success. It took 10 years, right? So,
Did
eh,
absolutely.
but then I'll call it out. Like there are guys like Aaron Harper, right, that are just killing it right now. Like, hey, franchise a brand, and now they've got a whole bunch going, and he's all over
Mhm.
social talking about responsible franchising, other stuff, right? Like, so I fear that some people see Aaron and they don't see the fact that he's been in the industry for a long time and he's built brands up and he's like done this before. So he didn't need the training wheels. And but there's that expectation that people start to get of, well, something's wrong with me. I've only sold 5 units this year, not 105.
Right.
Like, so how do you
Yeah.
help people like manage that expectation of, you're actually doing all right, kid. Keep up the good work.
Well, so what's interesting, two parts of that. So the we do competitive analysis. We do a competitive research to the industry, whether whatever it is, we look at other childcare concepts, child enrichment, Thai restaurant, whatever brand or industry you're going into. We go and we research franchise brands wherever they are.
Mhm.
And so over the last 15 years of doing this, we've seen brands who started out with 5 and then they were at 35 and then they were at 75 and now all of a sudden they're at 250 and it took them 3 to 5 years. So that's our insider perspective. We've watched these brands go. Nobody had ever heard of Orange Theory when they first started except for the people in that market,
Mhm.
and that was again an experienced franchisor who helped that brand grow very, very quickly. But they weren't viral. They were very slow and steady. Um, and people who saw them doing it really watched them grow in a very methodical way
Mhm.
until they did hit that, it looked like they just popped up out of nowhere and they were an overnight success. But it did take 3 to 5 years. I don't remember exactly what their trajectory was. So, and the funny thing about Rolling Suds is SMB launched them. We worked with the original founders, a father and son team. They've been in the business for 30 plus years. The business started when the son was born. It was kind of like, oh, I'm having a new baby. I should start a new business.
Huh?
And then he built it. The father built the business. His son graduated from college, decided to go into the family business. And they had kept expanding in their market in the Philadelphia region because their customers really appreciated their service offering. They showed up when they were supposed to, they charged what they said they would charge, and they did a great job.
Mhm.
And so then they worked not only with residential customers, but with commercial customers. And so they kept that business going steady throughout the year. And then, Aaron connected with them through our founder, Steve made that connection. The founder, the father and son wanted to grow faster than they felt they could grow on their own.
Mhm.
And so Aaron came in with all of his background experience, with investment level to take that brand from no franchisees to 100. And because it is only a 2 to 3 month ramp up period, he built in the model so you could train and get them started very quickly and earning money. Franchisees need to be able to pay back their debt, whether it's to themselves or to the bank, and start making money as soon as they possibly can. And so then that appears to be an overnight success, but it is years, almost decades in the making, as it goes.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up an important point. I mean, you can't start a franchise tomorrow if you just opened up businesses
No.
yesterday. Like most of these successful businesses that grow quickly, like you said, are 30-year successes that have
Mhm,
partnered with somebody to bring them on. And Aaron won't mind us sharing this because you had mentioned this early on as well. Like you gotta have some money, right? So if
mhm,
you are gonna grow fast, the one thing I love about
right.
what Aaron and now JT, I can't believe sometimes JT's over there, but that's awesome. But like Aaron had investment dollars that he knew he would need
Mhm,
because he'd already done the
right.
math. Said, okay, in order to grow at this rate, at this point I
At
need to
that
have
rate.
this person. At this point, I need to have this person.
Mhm,
At this point, I need to have that person. Some people might look at him and be like, bro, your P&L is way top heavy. Like your G&A is off the charts right now because you have all these operations people and people that are there to help operate a business and there are no franchises. He had them in place so that as he got franchises on board, they had world-class onboarding, right? And support. That's something a lot of franchise brands don't do because they operate lean. You can be lean, but you have to sell lean if you're gonna staff lean, right? So tell us your balance. Like, what do you see there, Don? Because that's a bit of a misconstrued point I see in the industry
mhm,
a lot. People want to grow fast, but they have no infrastructure
mhm,
for it. So guide us a little bit on that.
right. Yeah, and, most of our brands don't grow that fast. They want to grow slow and steady. They're learning franchising as they go. And so, we're educating them about the industry, about what it takes to become a successful franchisor, getting them involved in the IFA, and really figuring out how best to support their franchisees. So they take profits out of their core business and they reinvest it into franchising. And instead of taking, a big long vacation like they used to in their business when it hit a successful factor, they reinvest that into franchising. Or instead of, building on a huge addition to their house, they're looking at the long term of their brand. And instead of saying, okay, I want to take from, I'm in this town and I know I have a lot of customers who say, I'm really, when are you going to open in this town? And it's 15, 20, 30 minutes away. They say, oh, all right, well, let me look at that. They don't have manager staff there. They don't know the market. They're not part of the community. And so it might be something they can do. But it might also be something that if they franchise instead of spending that 100, 250, $500,000 to open up that other market, they find a franchisee who lives in that area, is part of the school district. Their kids grew up there. They're engaged in the community. They hang out. They know people on town council, whatever they are, they become that brand ambassador in that area. And then those franchise brands grow slower, but they reinvest that money that comes in from their franchise fees and they build the royalty base over time, which is where the success factor is. Franchisors who are just looking for the fees and just looking to sell are not going to be successful. It's not sustainable. Your
Mhm.
franchisees have to make money, they have to validate for the brand, and then they validate going forward.
I'm glad you said that. I once was talking to a brand at a conference. It was a food concept, and I won't share the name because I think I might have forgotten it also. It was very forgettable. But this person was talking to me and he's like, yeah, but, most, I was like asking him investment levels and he said, oh yeah, it costs about this much to get a unit open. He's like, but we find all of our franchisees need to operate about 2 or 3 units so they can make their target income. I was like, whoa, 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 back up. It costs you, let's say, $500,000 to get the lease set up, build out the location, get launched per location. And I need to own 3 of those locations to make 150 grand a year. So I'm 1.5 in, maybe 2 in, and my payoff's going to be like 30 years, dude. Like that's not viable. Like what are you doing? But he didn't, like, the owner and founder, he was all hopped up like, this is super cool. And I was like, you're building a failing concept. Like, really, it's going to fail. Unless you just have people that are in love with the idea and they're okay throwing their money at this to make a lot less than they used to make, working 10 times as hard because restaurants are hard. It just blew my mind.
Restaurants are hard.
But
Yeah.
I mean, you were just talking about the opposite of that, right? Like, franchisees are the central focus of franchising. How do you see that? How do you see founders working around that concept and really succeeding and helping their Z's succeed?
It's really about doing everything that they need to do. And we talked about this before. It's making sure that the profitability exists there. There are definitely people who love food franchises and they are hard work. And a lot of times the margins aren't where they could be in the service business, but people love them. They just do. They love the idea of owning a restaurant, their family's involved. And it is a vocation that they just aspire to own. And they will be happy doing it as long as they are able to pay their bills and have a good living and take time off, leave a good manager in place. Um, so we look at the numbers from the very beginning. Our CFO and our, financial team look at the economics and just say, is there enough money in this for the franchisee to be able to support the business with the technology that will make it efficient, that they can pay their staff a good wage, and be happy and loyal and come back to work every day and not call out because they're really kind of miserable and they're
Mhm.
not getting paid well compared to the next shiny thing that's happening on the other side of town. Um, and, it's really watching those numbers carefully because having franchisee testimonials of somebody saying, I am in this business, I absolutely love what I do, and I would do it again. And then it might be that they want to open a second and third location or fourth or fifth. I have one of my franchisees, I remember the switch with her. She became so happy when she hit a number, and this was a while ago, but it was literally just $60,000 more in annual revenue that put her into a point where she felt comfortable hiring a manager. She spent more time actively marketing in her community, and then her business grew double digits for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
It seems like magic, but it was allowing her to focus less on being in the business and working on the business. And she bought 2 more locations.
Yeah. Yeah. That's people talk about unit sales. The best unit sales in my mind are existing operators just expanding, right?
Yep.
I worry sometimes for young brands that oversell or sell really fast and leave no room for their best operators to expand. Because now,
Mhm.
if I am a great franchise owner and I want to expand, I have to buy out my neighbor.
Right.
I have to pay a fee to transfer the contract. Like, you're not
Mhm.
incentivized to do that, or I've got to go operate something out of state. And I know people that do it. Like, hey, I live in
Yeah.
Tuscaloosa and I operate Phoenix. Okay, like, that's not as easy, but it's doable.
It's a different model. Yeah, it's a different model and it's a different infrastructure. I think those franchisees who are from the day one multi-unit, they are going to have to be supported. They're going to have a supporting team to be able to manage it. They're not quite like a area developer, but they have to have the management staff that they trust to build that location, and they are capitalized at a different level
Mhm.
than the person who says, you know what, I've always wanted to own my own business and I'm going to open up this franchise and work it hard. and be able to pass it down to my kids or sell it in 5 or 10 years and
Mm,
pull profitability off the table. Um, it's a different mindset, but to your point, you're not going to be able to, and nor should you as the franchisor, push a franchisee to buy or commit to 2 and 3 locations if they're not capitalized and structured to do it, because it's going to tie up territory that isn't going to help the brand expand in the short term, which is really what you need. You need to get that brand presence out there so it becomes more of a household name in the markets where you're going to open. Um,
mm,
and then, they will not be successful in their one unit because they're going to be pressured to try and open that second location,
mm.
probably before they're ready. And if there's economic uncertainty, which happens randomly here and there every once in a while, you have to plan for the unforeseeable future.
Mhm. I I think you're
Mhm.
approaching a topic that's a podcast in and of itself, which is, you know, as a franchise owner, should I be chasing those multi-packs and trying to sell multiple
Mhm.
territories? You and I are on the same page about that because we've both seen lots of brands crash and burn. They're like, everyone's got a
Mhm.
5, everyone's got a 3-pack.
Yeah.
And yeah, people just aren't capitalized enough, and then they're on
Mhm.
contract to deploy the next truck or the next territory, and they're like, I haven't
Right.
even got this one done yet." And so, yeah, it just creates a
Mhm.
system failure unless it's
Yeah.
great infrastructure and you target the right
It's a
people.
different, yeah, it's a very different franchise owner. Absolutely.
Totally agree.
Mhm.
Well, let's
Yeah.
wrap on this up because you mentioned this early on, Don, and I just thought some people, somebody listening really needs to hear this right now, but it's also super true. It's lonely. Franchising can be fairly lonely, and you can feel pretty isolated. Would you share some thoughts about like how do you recommend founders, franchise executives overcome kind of that loneliness, that isolation side, and get the resources and support that they need?
Yeah, I think it is solopreneurs who decide to franchise have made it because they were ambitious and they were innovative and they worked hard and they got there. And they may not have felt comfortable talking to other people. And the one thing that I think about franchising that is really unique compared to other industries I've been in, oil, convenience store,
Mhm.
coffee, non-franchise, is that the franchising industry is very, very welcoming. It is community based. People understand what it's like to be that independent operator, and they are ready to network. And whether it's through the IFA or through affiliated events that happen, I think you have to reach out to the other people who have been going through it. Um, you know, People on our team have been in franchising for a very long time, and we connect our clients with those other people because we may know a lot, but we don't know everything. And we keep learning. And how do we keep learning? Is that we interact with other people who are continuing to be innovative and collaboration. I love the idea. I am the most creative when I am working with a team to collaborate and we all riff on other ideas. I used to do that with my marketing team all the time. And so I love to be able to do that with clients. But then, Women's Franchise Network, we had 27 people the other night and we're all talking about things that everybody's experiencing. We had 3 different people who do web design there. We had 2 different people who were in child education. We had 3 or 4 different brands that were in service, and they're all interacting. And there's enough business for everybody, and everybody improves. It's just like with the franchisees. If one succeeds and then the other one succeeds, everybody's going to bring everybody else up because they collaborate on what are the best practices.
Yeah.
And you keep people from making mistakes. I think, having the franchisor help franchisees not make mistakes, you have to be leaning on other people as a franchisor to
Mhm.
figure it out.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well, or else, or well, here's the thing. What is the quote? Those who failed to learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. There are
yes.
a lot of lessons of franchising history that you can avoid. I mean, we're talking seven-figure bankruptcy level mistakes that if you just sat down
Mhm,
and had coffee with a friend or join one of these networking groups that the IFA puts
mhm,
on or that local people get together, meet people at shows and go sit down and pick their brains. I've seen competitors sit down with each other. In fact, I was at
mhm,
an event and Aaron was there. Aaron Harper, we talked about Rolling Suds. There was another power
mhm.
wash franchise owner there. I was like, "Do you know
Yeah.
that guy?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "You should know him. I mean, you guys are in the same space, but I promise you, he's a very abundant mindset guy. He'd love to talk to you because this guy
Hmm.
was saying, he hadn't sold very many units and was like, this guy,
Right.
take the whole power or spray power washing concept away off the table and just talk about franchise sales. There's no one better.
Mhm.
So they sat down and talked for like an hour at this event. That's the mindset of the industry. So you got to unlock
Yeah.
it. I'm with you.
Our clients do that all the time. So we're planning our annual summit and we are definitely encouraging people to come together and network and learn from each other and share best practices because everybody can grow that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's about there's a lot of abundance out there. There's no reason to feel
Mhm.
like there's scarcity. And so what if you compete with a candidate that might be looking at both brands? Doesn't matter because there are
Oh,
other
yeah.
candidates out there.
The franchisors that I love hearing is when they say, you know what, if somebody decides not to join my brand and they choose a competitor's brand, that's great because there was not a fit for some reason.
Mhm.
Either we didn't click or they didn't feel like they understood the model quite the way we do it. They didn't want to do business the way we do business. Let them work with another brand
Yeah.
because otherwise you might not find common ground and in 2 3 years they're exiting the system because it just wasn't a fit from day one. So that's okay. I'd rather them be successful somewhere else than be a problem for me.
Yeah, you're darn right. And it's
Mhm.
funny how it's so nuanced, but you've got to be very comfortable with the no, and recognizing
Oh
when
yeah.
it's not the right fit, especially cultural
Nope.
reasons. Man,
Mhm.
that's the easiest way to wreck a brand is to bring in the genius jerk. When you've got a super kind culture, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Don, you've been awesome. Shared a lot of great insights with us. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Either email or LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn all the time. So Dawn Abbamondi on LinkedIn. I'm on the Women's Franchise Committee. You can find me on the IFA page, or you can email me Dawn DAWN at smbfranchising.com. And that's those are options. Dawn Abbamondi. If you Google me, you'll find me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the nice part about having a unique last name. If you look for
It
me,
is, yeah,
you'll find a plethora of Dave Hansons out
a
there.
plethora.
Hey, Don, thanks again. You're awesome. Thanks for giving us some of your time, sharing so much wisdom with us, and look forward to having you on again.
Thanks so much, Dave. Have a great day.
Thanks.